Alright, so the OP's father in this story wants to be a part of her life again, so what does she do? She gives him a detailed PowerPoint presentation on why she'll never be in his life again. I'm 24 female, and my mother died when I was 7 from leukemia. I have very few memories of her from before she was sick, and I didn't get to spend a lot of time with her in her last year. But she was an artist, and until she could not anymore, she would make me little collages when she was in the hospital with drawings, photos, and messages for me. My grandmother put them all in a book for me after she died. I wanted to be like my mom and counselor and thought that it would help, so I started a journal where I would do kind of a similar thing, and I've done it at least 1 page a week all these years ever since she passed. More when I miss her or have something hard going on. So I have kind of a unique record of my mental state over the last 16 years. My father remarried when I was 9. My stepmother really leaned hard into the quote, "I'm your mom now" role, and my father didn't stop her. It improved when they had my half-brother, because, well, she basically just forgot about me then. Unfortunately, he got cancer when he was 3. And I pretty much ceased to exist for my father. He was either working or gone with my brother, and I spent all my teen years mostly at home alone or with my grandparents. The mantra was that my brother needed to be the focus because he might die, so I needed to not be selfish since I was healthy. I stopped trying to talk to him when I was 16, and it was a dark time. I moved out at 18 years of age and cut them off completely 100%. Well, my grandparents let me know that my brother died a couple years ago, but respected my desire to remain no contact with my father. Well, he recently reached out to them because he wants to see me and talk. I went through my old journals and made him a PowerPoint with images of the entire thing, where I had talked about being frustrated and feeling abandoned and unwanted. Some of the literal quotes of things my dad had said to me during arguments. Even the really dark stuff from when I was seriously depressed. Then I ended it with a photo of one of my mom's collages, where she had written, "Remember that your dad and I are always here for you." And I wrote, "You failed, go away," underneath it. I felt like him being able to see it from my literal perspective would communicate why I don't want him back better than I could. Evidently it worked, but a little too well. Because I've been bombarded by family telling me that it's understandable that I don't want to see him. But what I sent gutted him, and he's completely fallen apart after reading through it, and it was unnecessarily cruel. Maybe it was. I know my bar for that is kind of weird sometimes. So I ask you guys, am I the a-hole? Edit, a couple of the follow notes since it came up in the comments. I love my brother. I don't resent him. He was a good kid, and I wish he was still with us. None of this is his fault. To me, it's completely my father's, and to lesser extent, stepmother's. The parents prevented me from spending time with him as he got sicker, so I wouldn't have been allowed to be there for him, even if I've been able to, which I wasn't towards the end because I was also struggling to stay alive. Number 2, I do have empathy. I understand what my father lost. I was there. I also lost those same people, plus effectively my own father. Even so, to me, there's no excuse for completely shutting your own kid completely out of your life, while also preventing them from getting any kind of help. I understand depression and freezing up, I've been there, and I still, even not being an adult, manage to consider the impact of my behavior on other people. If he was that bad off, he should have given me up to be raised by somebody else. My mom's parents asked, and he would not agree to let me stay with them full-time. I could have, and Dad was able to occasionally tell me he loves me, even if it was just a text message. Alternatively, I could have lived with my grandparents and had people around me who cared about me every single day, even if that wasn't my father. I got neither, and every request for help or any kind was met with, "Suck it up." I can sympathize with having to function while breaking down inside, but I can't empathize with what I did. Number 3, I gather from relatives who have backed off after some hard boundary setting that my father and stepmother split not long ago and are in divorce proceedings, which is why he reached out now and why the rest of the family was upset with me, how I responded at the time. He wasn't in a good place already. I've told them that if they care about him to encourage him to keep away from me, refuse to pass on any messages, and try to get him to an inpatient care or something if they're worried he's going to do something rash. I don't want anything to do with him, and I've told them that I don't want to hear about anything that happens after this point, but the rest of the family loves him, so for their sake, I hope he pulls himself together. What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. So I do have an update for this story. I hope you guys are enjoying the content so far. Here we go. A bunch of people have been asking me for an update, so I'm doing it here instead of the main sub, because I am the original one that blew up, and I just want to do it here again and have a fresh start. I had to talk with my paternal grandparents over Christmas vacation and showed them the PowerPoint. They had no idea that things were as bad as they were, or that I was actively thinking about hurting myself at the time of the quote accidents I had as a teen were not really accidents. So while they think it was still dangerously harsh under the circumstances, they understand better where I'm coming from, admit that my father messed up big time and that the family should have been more involved with me instead of just supporting him and my brother. They said that on the surface they thought I was fine and just having a bit of a trouble adjusting, but if they had known about the things described in the journal, they would have insisted my father gets help. They do want me to reconcile with him, but they understand why it might be too late for that, so they've agreed not to bring him up unless I do first and not pass on information either way. So that was actually productive. As for my father, I know a lot of people think I'll regret it if I don't reconcile, forgive, or whatever, but I'm not so sure that's true. I've tried to imagine a conversation with him that would not make things worse, and I just can't. Best case scenario, he's sorry and has a good grovel, but honestly, I think hearing that would just make me hate him more. Worst case scenario, nothing's really changed and I have to walk away before I end up with an assault charge. I also just can't imagine any real benefit or function to have him in my life. So reconnecting seems like a lot of work for actually no gain. As far as forgiveness, I don't know if that's actually possible. Apathy, maybe. As far as I know, he's alive. I've made it super clear that anyone who tries to give me information about him that I don't request for will also get the chop. So I'm probably not going to do any further updates. I'd rather just go back to forgetting he exists. For me, I'm probably as fine as I'm going to ever be. I have therapy, I have medicine, I can pass for a functional human most of the time. My deal with myself is that I have to at least stick around until my maternal grandparents pass away, so they don't hurt and I can wrap things up for them. So in the meantime, I'm just working on finding myself. I want to tell you guys thank you so much for everything, and I hope you have a great life. Alright, so this story had its sad moments, its happy moments, but let's read this one comment who gives a similar situation into their life. I ducked up. I met my dad 20 plus years after he dipped out of my life. I was maybe 11 or 12 at the time. His third or fourth wife contacted me out of the blue, thinking this would be great for both of us. I went multiple states away to visit him. Anyways, he's pretty sorry for himself. Blah, blah, blah. After a while, I thought, crap. I could have been dead for decades and this guy wouldn't have known. Then I thought about how he was actually doing any of the heavy lifting on this relationship. It was his wife trying to make him a little less depressed, I guess, or something. So I went ahead and just left. I missed the idea of having a dad, but ultimately, I wasn't that interested in it after so long. Don't know why I'm sharing this story. I just thought it was a good time. So I'm glad that commenter did share that story. If you have any stories you want to share about this situation, drop it down below. The final story of the day is titled this: Am I the a-hole for hating that my ex is living with my parents? Yeah, living with them. At the start of this year, I-29 female was stalked and harassed by a woman who believed that I was having an affair with her husband. It was over a month of daily harassment over the phone, on social media, and at times even public. She even threw a stone through my window and vandalized my car in the driveway. She was caught on security cameras and charges were brought against her. I had to spend a lot on lawyers to threaten legal suits against both the husband and wife to get her to back off. She was having some sort of mental breakdown and went to a psych hold. Her meds helped and she agreed to stop and accepted that I wasn't the involved party. As part of our legal agreement, she made social media posts apologizing and clearing my name, and some financial recompensation for damaging caused. During all this, my fiancé was of no help at all. We lived together and he would not do anything to support me. When I got accosted in a public place, he simply leave. When our condo was attacked, he got in his car and left to stay with a friend. He said it was too embarrassing for him to stay around. He didn't seem to realize that I was scared and felt my life was in danger. He knew that I was innocent in this, and yet he didn't stop his friends and family from believing the worst about me, and making snide comments here and there. I begged him to help me, and he'd act frustrated, as if there was nothing he could do here. When the woman harassing me made an apology post, I forwarded them everywhere explaining how I got caught up in someone else's tragedy. I called my fiancé a coward for his behavior, which was also my way of publicly breaking up with him. My parents were very supportive of me throughout this mess, and they gave me money for my lawyer's retainer. But they did not like my public F you to my ex. They said that it was petty of me and asked me to be nicer and not break up. I did eventually remove his name from my post, but I was not interested in any relationship with him anymore. After all this went away, I was still pretty much traumatized and paranoid. I quit my job, and I couldn't stand living with my ex. My best friend lived a few states away, and she invited me to stay with her as a change of scenery. It was the break I needed. I also found a great job there while I was visiting and decided to settle there. I've been living in this town since then. I've booked tickets to visit my family for Christmas, and last night my mother told me that my ex is staying with them as a house guest. My mother said he wasn't doing too well after I left, and my parents let him move in with them. I don't want to see my ex, and I'm pretty hurt that my parents are taking care of this man, who absolutely did not stand by me. Would I be the a-hole if I tell my parents I'm not coming anymore as long as he's in the home? What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. I think the parents are seriously overstepping a boundary set. There is an update to this profile. It was posted about 2 weeks after the original incident. Let's go ahead and jump into that now. I didn't go home for Christmas. I called my parents and told them I wasn't coming, and that set off a lot of recrimination and arguing. Well, my mom getting upset at me for my coldness and my dad reprimanding me for, quote, breaking mother's heart. Mom's trying to get me back together with ex. Dad goes along with whatever mom wants to do. I asked them why they'd want me to be with someone who did not protect me, and Mom said if the stalker was a man, he'd have protected me, but it was just a woman. The lady from a good home, so there wasn't really any real danger. This was news to me because when I was happening to both, we were worried about my safety, but now they're just downplaying it all. This is exactly the argument X had used, and they're just buying into his sob story. Then Mom goes into how this was embarrassing for X and says I wronged him by putting him into that situation. This brought up a long history of Mom's disappointment in me. I was never what she wanted me to be. I know she loves me and had thought of our differences were the typical mother-daughter conflict everyone has. But my mom has this, fear that runs deeper than that. She's a slim, pretty woman who's very particular about manners and appearance. I got my build from my dad's side of the family. I'm very curvy with very large features. My weight and my figure have been a cause for concern for my mom, who'd pressure me to cover up and downplay it. She wanted me to go into teaching or medicine, but I didn't do well enough in school for all that. I ended up forming a career in sales, and guys, I am very good at it. I was making good money at a large corporation. While I dressed modestly, I was no longer wearing baggy clothes, but professional suits with a good fit. The fact that I look like I do and that I do sales was a scandalous act to my mother. The guy whose affair brought problems in my life is a manager in the same company I used to work for. We worked on the same floor in different departments. I think he let me take the fall because knowing he was having the affair with who would have put his job in jeopardy and would have been a lot more scandalous. My mother took things that the wife putting the blame on me was inevitable, because I just have that look. Yeah, she thinks her fears about my appearance and career had come true in this incident. She's horrified that instead of learning from my quote mistakes, I now have a job that's client relationship manager, even though it's at a financial firm. She feels pressured to force me to come home and get married and leave my career behind. Yeah, I'm just so sad about how all this turned out. My relationship ended and now I'm losing my parents. Meanwhile, that cheating man and his psycho wife are still married and he still has the same job. But guys, let me know, am I the a-hole for not going home for Christmas?